This is the story of how Michael Carter, a 70-year-old retiree from a small American town, is finally making his dream come true, taking his very first cruise on the Holland America Koningsdam, sailing from Seattle to Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Glacier Bay, and Vancouver. He'd been preparing for 5 years, saving money, reading forums, watching videos, even practicing how to use a buffet. But the morning of departure, panic hit hard. Michael stood at the Seattle port, gripping a folder of documents with sweaty palms. For the third time in 5 minutes, he checked everything: passport, printed tickets, insurance, excursion list, as if one paper might have vanished while he reached for a tissue. Glasses, meds, extra socks, he mumbled, patting the pockets of his vest. God, why didn't I buy that suitcase with the GPS tracker? Around him, life was buzzing. Couples in loud Hawaiian shirts laughing and taking selfies with the ship. Families with kids rolling suitcases like pros. Older gents in white Panama hats chatting over itineraries like it was their 100th voyage. And him? He felt like he'd wandered into someone else's birthday party. Everyone knows what they're doing, and I'm not even sure where to check my bag, and I read about the cruise terminal. He glanced around and finally spotted a luggage drop-off sign, then reluctantly wheeled his suitcase toward a waiting crew member. All he had left now was his folder, a bag of meds, and shaky knees. "Sir, are you all right?" Michael flinched. A cruise staff member stood nearby, grinning ear to ear. Just, checking that I've got everything," Michael mumbled, feeling his face turn red. "Don't worry, sir," the guy said, clapping him on the shoulder. "If you forget anything, we've got a shop on board. They even sell toothbrushes." Michael nodded, but thought to himself, "Exactly. They're prepared for everything. I'm not." He looked up at the massive white Koningsdam sparkling in the sunlight. 12 decks, hundreds of cabins, thousands of people. And here I am, the only guy who doesn't know which side of the knife to use at the captain's dinner. "All right, old man," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. 5 years of prep. Time to stop shaking like a kid on his first day of school." The loudspeakers crackled with the boarding announcement. His hands trembled, and he dropped his bag of medications. "Damn," he gasped. "Great, first disaster, and all they did was say we can board." But then he glanced up and saw an elderly couple next to him, struggling with a suitcase, something sticking awkwardly out. "Are those flippers?" "George, I told you they wouldn't fit," the lady huffed, trying to shove them back in. Michael unexpectedly burst out laughing. At least it's not just me. With that weird sense of relief, he took a step forward toward his very first cruise. "All right, Carter, if they're bringing flippers to Alaska, you've got this." Michael had settled by a porthole in the ship's lobby when a memory came rushing back. That evening, 5 years ago, rain was tapping against the roof of his little house in suburban Chicago, and the TV was playing a commercial for Alaska Cruises. "The dream trip for those who love comfort and adventure," the voiceover promised, as glaciers thundered into turquoise water on screen. "I'll be 65 soon, and by 70, why not make it happen?" Michael had thought, setting down the remote. The idea seemed crazy. He'd never even been on a ferry. But it had already been 3 years since Martha's funeral, and he was still sitting inside those same 4 walls, counting the days till retirement. The next morning, he started a dedicated notebook titled Cruise Plan. The first pages were full of questions. How much does it cost? Which cabin is best? What should I pack? His neighbor Tom, a seasoned cruiser, chuckled, "Mike, you're prepping like it's a mission to Mars." What really stressed him out was the etiquette. One time at the grocery store, he overheard 2 women gossiping about those clueless newbies who don't even know how to eat seafood. That night, Michael went down a YouTube rabbit hole watching How to Eat a Lobster Properly about 20 times. He even bought a frozen one and practiced at home, feeling ridiculous. God, I'm probably the only guy who rehearsed his vacation, he thought, half laughing as he watched well-dressed couples stroll through the lounge. His fingers tapped nervously on the table, remembering those silly practice runs. What if he still messed something up? Suddenly, the sound of clinking glasses broke his thoughts. The bartender was doing a trick with a disappearing cherry. An older lady gasped, and her husband laughed. "Hey, we're on vacation! Time to loosen up!" Michael realized he'd been gripping his fork so tight it left marks in his palm. He took a deep breath and set down his drink. "All right, Carter, if they can enjoy a cherry trick like it's magic, maybe you can stop torturing yourself." And hey, was there anyone else on this ship who practiced eating lobster before the trip? Other than me, of course. Michael walked down the corridor on Deck 7, feeling like an astronaut setting foot on an alien planet. His eyes darted between sparkling crystal chandeliers and polished wood panels. "Okay, according to the map, my restaurant should be on Deck 2. He nervously touched the folded-up piece of paper in his pocket, a printed ship map with handwritten notes in marker. After taking the elevator down, which, to his surprise, played classical music, Michael confidently approached a door marked with an elegant sign, Pinnacle Grill. Nice, found it! But as soon as he stepped inside, doubt crept in. The room was way too fancy. Crisp white tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters in tuxedos. "Good evening, sir," greeted the maitre d' with a flawless smile. "May I see your VIP access card, please?" Card? Michael patted his pockets, his ears starting to burn. "Oh, God, this is that VIP-only place." "I think you may be a little lost," the waiter said gently, noticing the panic on his face. "The main restaurant, the dining room, is just next door. This one requires a special reservation." "Oh, I'm sorry, Michael backed toward the exit, nearly tripping over a chair leg. "Fantastic. Haven't even had dinner yet, and already causing a scene." "Hey, rookie!" came a raspy voice from behind him. Michael turned and saw a sturdy man in a Hawaiian shirt holding a cocktail. "Looks like you're starting your cruise by sneaking into the restricted zones," the stranger chuckled. "I'm Bill. Been cruising for 20 years. Usually I do that stuff on purpose." "Michael," he managed to say, still red as a beet. "Relax, buddy," Bill said, clapping him on the back. "On my first cruise, I spent 2 hours looking for my cabin and ended up napping in the laundry room. We've all been green once." Michael burst out laughing. "Well, at least someone gets it." "By the way," Bill winked, "if you really want to confuse the waitstaff, ask for ketchup with your oysters. Works every time." "I think I've had enough excitement for one day," Michael sighed, but he could already feel the weight lifting off his chest. "Come on, I'll show you where the real food is," Bill said, waving him along. "And heads up, if you see me ordering a third dessert, pretend you don't know me." As they walked to the dining room, Michael realized mistakes were part of the adventure. "Wonder how many more dumb things I'll do on this cruise. Judging by Bill, probably a lot," he thought with a blush. The menu at the main dining room reminded Michael of a thesis paper, so many words he didn't recognize. "Venison carpaccio, duck leg confit. Good Lord, I wouldn't recognize a regular duck if it quacked in front of me." His finger hovered over tuna tartare when a line from the cruise guide popped into his head. "Raw fish may upset untrained stomachs." "What's the matter, pal? Menu got you cornered." Bill, sitting across from him, sipped his wine and raised an eyebrow. "You look stuck between play it safe and don't embarrass yourself." Michael sighed and scratched his head. "At my age, I don't want to look like a bumpkin. What if I grab the wrong fork or, God forbid, eat something the wrong way?" Bill laughed so loudly, a nearby waiter jumped. "Oh, Mike, if only you knew what I did on my first cruise. One time I mistook fondue for soup and dunked a crouton in it. The maitre d' looked at me like I'd just defiled a sacred relic." He cut a piece of steak and pointed at Michael's plate. "Listen, man, no one expects you to eat like some French noble. Just enjoy yourself. Want to eat steak with ketchup? Go ahead. Curious about escargot but freaked out? Order it and dig in with a toothpick if you have to. Michael smiled in spite of himself. For the first time all evening, he noticed a young couple at the next table gleefully taking photos of every dish, not giving a damn what anyone thought. "You know what?" he said suddenly, setting down the menu. "Tonight I'm sticking with my usual steak." Bill nodded approvingly. "But tomorrow," Michael added with determination, "I'm ordering that Carpaccio thing, even if I butcher the name." "Now that's the spirit," Bill clinked glasses with him. "And tomorrow I'll teach you how to sneak an extra roll from the breadbasket. That's cruise-level mastery." When Michael finally took a bite of his safe steak, he realized that for the first time all night, he wasn't thinking about how he looked. Bill's right, even those guys in tuxes were once newbies. He found himself already looking forward to tomorrow night's dinner. Heck, if I can handle Carpaccio, maybe I can survive a dance show. Nah, let's not get carried away. The rain in Ketchikan drizzled like it didn't want to let the tourists go, but Michael paid no attention. He was captivated, listening to their tour guide, Sam, a native Alaskan with a silver mustache and a voice that cut through the sound of water. "This is it, Gold Rush Street. In 1898, thousands of folks just like you stood right here with nothing but a sack over their shoulder and a wild dream in their eyes. They left behind families, homes, stability. For what?" Sam held up a hefty gold nugget, a replica, he quickly confessed. "For a chance to say, 'At least I tried.'" Michael suddenly felt a strange burn in his chest. "And what did I leave behind? Throw pillows? Reruns on TV?" He imagined those madmen sailing in the cargo holds of packed ships, trudging through snow with one thought. What if it works? "The funny part is," Sam went on, "most of them never found gold, but those who survived never regretted it. Because at least they tried," Michael finished aloud, surprising himself. Sam looked at him with a smile. "Exactly, mister. You got the point." On the way back to the pier, Michael was quiet, processing everything. Bill, walking beside him, tried cracking a joke at first. "What's up, buddy? Already thinking about trading our cabin for a pickaxe and a gold pan?" But seeing Michael's face, he sobered up. "Hey, everything all right?" "You know, Bill." Michael stopped, looking at the old wooden buildings. Those guys were 20, 30 years old. They risked everything. And me? He clenched his fists. I waited 70 years for the right moment, just to book a cruise. Bill laughed suddenly, but it wasn't mocking. It was kind. "So what? You're here, aren't you? You could have stayed home complaining about how you missed your chance in your youth. But instead, you're up there," he pointed to the wet sky, "studying fancy menus and listening to gold rush stories." Rain rolled down Michael's face, and he wasn't sure if it had mixed with tears. "You're damn right. I paid for this cruise and I'm going to enjoy it, damn it!" Michael straightened up. "From now on, no more what-ifs." He suddenly turned and marched toward a souvenir kiosk with a giant sign. "Seaplane flight over the fjords, $219. "Whoa there, cowboy!" Bill waved his arms. "How about starting smaller, like with a salmon tasting?" Michael had already pulled out his wallet, but paused and tucked it back in. "All right, the seaplane can wait, but tomorrow in Juneau I am trying—" "Trying what?" Bill asked, wary. "The Royal King Crab, whole, even if I have to Google how to breathe afterward." Bill gave him a solid pat on the back. "That's what I like to hear, and I'll be there with a camera, just in case you mistake your lips for tentacles." As they walked back to the ship, Michael took one last glance at the town. "Maybe I didn't find gold, but I think I dug up something better." The restaurant in Juneau smelled like ocean breeze and garlic. Michael stared at the monster in front of him, a whole king crab taking up half the table. Its claws looked like garden shears, and its eyes practically said, "Well, old man, you dare?" "Hey, Bill, are we sure this thing's dead?" Michael joked, tapping the shell with his fork. "Only if you don't chicken out," Bill laughed. then it might just die of heartbreak. Michael took a deep breath and grabbed the cracker tool. One satisfying crack later, snow-white meat peeked out from the red shell. "Well, hello there, buddy." When the tender piece hit his tongue, he closed his eyes in bliss. "Damn, this is better than my grandma's stew, and that's coming from a guy who avoided seafood for 40 years because he thought it might bite back." And yet, the captain's dinner was still ahead. After the excursion, Michael proudly hung up his newly acquired tuxedo. Who would have thought? Michael Carter and formal wear in the same sentence. When he finally got his bow tie tied, on the 5th try, he caught himself smiling at the mirror. "Not bad, old man, not bad at all." The captain's dinner was pure magic. Crystal sparkled, the orchestra played, and the waiters called him sir. When dessert arrived, Michael didn't even glance at the calorie count. He just let himself enjoy the moment. "You know," he said to Bill, "a week ago I'd have died of stress worrying I'd spill sauce on this tux. But now you look like you were born in that suit," Bill winked. "Well, except for the part where you're a cowboy from Illinois. Don't get cocky." The next day, walking past a group of confused newcomers, Michael spotted an older couple staring in panic at the ship's map. "Deck C?" he asked politely. "You want to head over there by the red elevators, and don't miss the theater show after dinner. There's a magician who actually makes stuff disappear, unlike my common sense when I booked this cruise." The woman laughed, and the man shook his hand gratefully. "Thanks, friend. You're like a guardian angel." Michael kept walking, humming to himself. A guardian angel in a Hawaiian shirt under a tux. Now that's a twist. The next stop. Skagway. Skagway greeted Michael with tourist chaos and screaming seagulls. He paused for a second to snap a photo of an old steam train, and when he looked up, the tour group had already disappeared around the corner. "Perfect, Carter. You're officially a lost senior," he smirked to himself, but surprisingly didn't feel the usual panic. Instead, he wandered through the old wooden storefronts with carved facades until he heard, "You looking for something special, or just enjoying freedom from the tour guide?" Behind the counter of an antique shop stood an older woman, her face lined like a map of Alaska. The sign read, "Mary, Curios and True Stories." "I guess a bit of both," Michael smiled, "though I'm sure my guide wouldn't love the true stories part." "Oh, those guides!" Mary rolled her eyes. "They still tell people this town was named after the sound of seagulls? Utter nonsense! Want to hear the real story?" An hour later, Michael was sitting on the shop's back porch with a mug of strange-smelling herbal tea, listening to Mary's tales. She'd taken him to a secret lookout behind the church where tourists never went, and showed him her grandfather's old gold mining helmet. "He dreamed of moving to Seattle to open a bakery," Mary said, brushing dust off the helmet. "But every year he'd say, 'Next season, once I've saved enough.' In the end, he died right here in Skagway, with a bag of unused tickets under his bed." Michael felt chills run down his spine. He picked up the helmet. It was heavy, scratched, worn. I dreamed of this cruise ever since I retired," he admitted quietly, "and I kept putting it off, scared I wouldn't go through with it." Mary studied him, then suddenly slapped the table. "Then here's to those who do go through with it." She pulled out a bottle of homemade lingonberry wine. "And don't you tell me your doctor says no. My grandpa lived to 102 and started every day with a shot of this." On his way back to the ship, Michael stopped at the dock. The wind tugged at his new Hawaiian shirt, Bill's gift. Somewhere out there in a parallel universe, he thought, there's another Michael Carter, the one who never boarded this ship. Poor guy. He stood there with his eyes closed, quietly savoring the moment. The last night on the ship was as warm as Michael's Hawaiian shirt, which now felt surprisingly natural on him. He and Bill were sitting on the aft deck, watching the sun melt into the ocean, turning the watercolors no Illinois retiree ever learned to name. "You know what I've realized this week?" Bill grunted, sipping his third or fourth Mai Tai. "You're one of us now." Michael laughed, leaning back in his chair. Hard to believe. Just 7 days ago, I was terrified they'd throw me off the ship for using the wrong salad fork. And now I know the salad fork's perfect for fishing out the last olive in a martini when no one's watching. Bill rolled his eyes, but his smile said he approved. Michael turned toward the ocean. The breeze played with his silver hair, and the ship's wake whispered behind them, "Look how far you've come." "Fear's a funny thing," Michael said thoughtfully. "It's like that restaurant door I accidentally walked through on the first day. I thought there'd be judgment behind it, but instead—" "Free canapes?" Bill offered. "No," Michael smiled. "New friends, new stories, a new me." "You know what's funny?" he added. "I spent 5 years preparing for this trip, but the real gift I gave myself came the moment I stopped preparing and just started living." Bill raised his glass. "Well then, cheers. You're not a newbie anymore. You're a traveler." "A traveler," Michael repeated, tasting the word. It sounded as natural as the waves rolling past. As they clinked glasses, a seagull cried somewhere overhead. I wonder, Michael thought, do seagulls ever get scared to leave the harbor? Or do they just know the wind will catch their wings? Vancouver welcomed them with a gloomy morning, but Michael stood on the deck, feeling like an entire orchestra was playing in his chest. City lights twinkled through the early fog as if winking at him. "Well, old man, how was the adventure?" He caught himself instinctively adjusting his Hawaiian shirt, now carrying the scent of ocean and freedom. Bill, already holding his suitcase, leaned against the railing next to him. "So, cowboy, heading back to your Illinois cattle and endless cornfields?" Michael smirked, pulling a crumpled business card from his pocket. "About that, you mentioned something about the Mediterranean in October." Bill froze, mouth open. "Wait a sec. Yesterday you were bragging about your Alaska ticket for next year." "Yeah, well, I never said it was my only ticket," Michael laughed, pulling 2 confirmations from his passport, one with grizzlies and glaciers, the other with sun-drenched Greek islands. "Like Mary said, if you're gonna live it up, do it royally." Bill clutched his chest in exaggerated horror. "Dear God, I've created a monster! Give it a year, and you'll be teaching me how to smuggle towels off the deck." When the ship finally docked, Michael did something he'd never have imagined a week ago. He turned his back to the Koningsdam and took a selfie, sticking his tongue out like a kid. In the background, Bill flashed an obscene hand gesture, which, of course, made it perfectly into the shot. In his hotel room, Michael set his suitcase on the bed, but didn't unpack. Instead, he pulled out the old gold miner's helmet from Skagway. Gently, he placed inside it 2 cruise tickets and a photo of his wife, Martha. "See, sweetheart," he whispered in his mind, "I finally learned how to buy tickets, not to the end of the line, but to a brand new life. And for anyone out there still hesitating, let me just say this. If a 70-year-old man who used to panic over French menus can learn to enjoy lobster, dancing, and even a few accidental adventures, then so can you. Life isn't a dress rehearsal. It's the one and only show, and there are no tickets for a second performance. So grab that suitcase, yeah, the one gathering dust in your closet, and go meet the real you. I promise, he's already waiting at the dock."